Hello friends, welcome to the new video. What's going on today? We haven't seen such a price collapse like today since the collapse of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange. But we should have eventually seen large-scale price movements because Bitcoin's volatility has been historically low over the past month. At first, Bitcoin was under pressure from the traditional financial market, which was constantly declining. And then, we saw this sudden movement to $25,000. Elon Musk, Bitcoin, SpaceX, Blackrock, China, Japan, bond prices. How is it all connected? Let's look into this video. The time codes will be in the description as usual. But before you start, don't forget to like it. This helps the channel a lot, and it helps me find motivation to create new content. Put it on. Thank you so much for your support. So, let's start with this article. Wall Street magazine reports that Elon Musk's company Space10 has sold bitcoins worth $373 million. Space10 bought these bitcoins back in 2021 year. According to a Wall Street Journal report dated August 17th, Space10 registered bitcoins worth $373 million on its balance sheet. However, now, as Wall Street magazine reports, these bitcoins have disappeared from the company's balance sheet. That is why they concluded that Elon Musk's Space10 company, and therefore Elon Musk indirectly, sold bitcoins this year. Firstly, friends, SpaceX is not a public company, so it is not obliged to disclose any of its financial statements at all. She has not made any official statements. Secondly, this article on Wall Street magazine is quite good, and only the last paragraph is dedicated to Bitcoin SpaceX, as if someone decided to add it at the last moment, knowing what kind of panic it would lead to in the market. We've been trying to find evidence for this, and guess what? They didn't find it. This looks like an artificial huge trigger in order to provoke the fall of Bitcoin. But how could this news provoke such a big drop in Bitcoin? That's because the liquidations are also record-breaking. Bitcoin has just experienced one of its largest volume liquidations in history. The outflow of funds is greater than during the collapse of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange in November 2022. Yes, the chain reaction of the liquidation of credit positions accelerated the fall of the crypto market. China had to lower the interest rate. They also poured 204 billion yuan into the market, which turned out to be insufficient, because the Chinese stock market continues to decline, and the Chinese authorities have already started warning investment funds not to sell Chinese stocks. The second largest developer in China, Evergrande, is finally filing for bankruptcy. You remember that his problems have been going on since 2021, and the Chinese economy is clearly not in the best condition right now. It looks something like this. Evergrande is filing for bankruptcy protection in the United States. He also asks American creditors to delay receiving payments from Evergrande. From this statement, it also becomes clear that the companies responsible for 40% of home sales in China have defaulted over the past 18 months, and all because Evergrande can't pay them. The real estate market occupies 30% of the Chinese economy. Therefore, the situation is very, very frightening for the market. That's why Bitcoin is also falling due to China's economic problems. However, it seems to me that these problems with the economy may eventually force China to flood the economy with money, which will lead to the growth of markets. However, this will be yet to come. 2 days ago, the US Federal Reserve held another meeting. The market expected the Fed to start cutting rates, but Jerome Powell said firmly that this would not happen in the 23rd year. Here are his main theses. I have written them out. Most RS officials still see the need for higher rates. Some officials worry about the excessive tightening of the Fed's policy and the risks it carries. The Fed sees tougher conditions for bank loans. That is, banks issue loans reluctantly. The Fed does not predict a recession in 2023, but they see restrained economic growth in the 24th and 25th. The fall in the value of commercial real estate is hurting some banks. Officials consider raising rates an effective tool. And finally, most US Federal Reserve officials see big risks of continued inflation growth. That is, they assume that we can expect a second peak in inflation if the policy of the US Federal Reserve is relaxed now. This speech by Jerome Powell led to the fact that bond yields are starting to rise rapidly due to fears that the US Federal Reserve will start raising rates again. Bonds are warning of rising UA debt, and markets will be shaken if Treasury yields rise even higher. On this graph, for example, we see the peak of October 16, 1987. The peak yield is above 10%. This led to the stock market crash when the market fell by 22% in one day, on October 19, 1987. We see that in August, the yield on 10-year Treasury bonds rose from 3.75 to 4.22%. Of course, this is still not above 10%, but it is necessary to monitor this indicator. By the way, Michael Burry last time in the 2008 year staged an attack of the markets precisely because he was afraid that bond yields would rise significantly. Well, last quarter, Michael staged a market attack again. Another news that scared the markets. The SEC postponed the decision on all spot Bitcoin's TEF until 2024 year. Interestingly, this is fake news. It's just a throw-in. After all, as it turned out, there is no source. Just speculation. In fact, Blackrock insiders say that spot Bitcoin and TEF will be accepted over the next 6 months. But if not Blackrock, then Grayscale, ARK Invest, Fidelight. A lot of companies are now applying to open a spot Bitcoin TEF in the USA. But before we get to what these and TEF can lead to, I want to remind you, we talked about the fact that Blackrock, before the launch of Bitcoin, TF will try to put pressure on the price of Bitcoin in order to take your coins cheaper. What if Blackrock is already doing it right now? Write in the comments what you think about this. For me personally, it looks quite logical. And now for the good news. Spot Bitcoin and TEF will be a big trigger for Bitcoin. That's what happened to gold, for example, when they launched Gold Spot and TEF. You understand what will happen when at least one spot TEF for Bitcoin is accepted. And if there are several, just listen to this video clip. And TEF gives the investor an easy way to enter the asset. The people who sell and TEF are money management consultants. They manage most of the capital in the world and in the USA. Just look at them. That's exactly what they operate on. Blackrock manages $9.5 trillion, Vanguard $8.1 trillion, FI divide $4 and $3 trillion, and so on down the list. At the moment, if you are a capital consultant and you think you want to invest in Bitcoin, since it turned out to be the highest yielding asset class, how will you attract your clients to Bitcoin? How will you do it? One of the options is to try to become a Bitcoin custodian yourself and try to store your clients' private keys somewhere. But this is a rather careless decision. You can open an account on Coinbase, but most large funds are not regulated to be able to open accounts on crypto exchanges. You can buy shares in the Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust Fund, which is not really a TEF, is not a physical Bitcoin, is not liquid, and is traded on the OTC market. Thus, when you enter the ITEF, you open up the cryptocurrency world to fund managers who, because of this, will be able to offer their clients to buy physical Bitcoin. Now we have an asset manager. For example, a manager of a large pension fund who decided to play golf today with wealthy people, and he tells them this Bitcoin has gone up by 83% in the first 6 months, and it's still 50% below its historical peak. Why not invest 2% of our portfolio in it? This is a turning point. Now you are imagining the same golf game with the same fund manager whose client wants to enter Bitcoin. And this manager thinks, if my client tells me that I want to enter Bitcoin, what the hell should I do? Bitcoin and TEF will give them a tool. And yes, the funds will take a regulated commission for these services, so they will have an incentive to bring more customers to Bitcoin. Over time, I think this will become the entry point to the crypto market for 10% of the assets in the world that will begin to flow into Bitcoin. And since Bitcoin is a scarce and limited asset, the more purchases, especially from a pot instrument, the more the price will rise. But I want you to understand that spot and TEF for Bitcoin will definitely appear. This is said not only by insiders, but also by experts in the field of cryptocurrencies. The CEO of the Kraken exchange says, quote, "I am sure that we will have spot Bitcoin and those in the USA. And I think it's possible this year." Listen to what he says. You know what's interesting? Trading with pot, Bitcoin and TIFs is attracting a lot of attention now. Already half a dozen companies are hoping to get approval for their launch. However, we are seeing delays after delays when we will get these permissions and whether we will get them at all. I think that, in general, the question is simple. I am sure that at some point in time, spot Bitcoin and TIFs will appear in the US. I mean, there are already similar products in other countries, in Europe, the UK and so on, I know this firsthand, because we cooperate with them. We are a subsidiary of CF Benchmarks. It is the largest provider of benchmarks and indices in the cryptocurrency space. We are also in the front row, because we are the chosen supplier for Mostit in the USA. Now let's move on to a more complicated question. When will this happen? You know, right now the situation is generally unpredictable. I hope that at least one of the applications that are in the queue for consideration will be approved, perhaps even several at once. I think there is a high probability that this will happen this year. Believe me, if he wasn't allowed to say it, we wouldn't have heard it. And he tells me about 5 years of waiting. No, just 1 year. Tom Lee spoke live and gave his Bitcoin price forecast. If spot Bitcoin and TEF are approved, then this is what he thinks will happen next. I always like to listen to your price forecasts because they are so bold. What are your forecasts for Bitcoin? For example, finally 2024. But if spot Bitcoin and TEF are approved, I think that demand will take away more coins than the daily supply of miners. In this case, our cryptographic strategist Sean Farrell predicts a price of $150,000 for Bitcoin. Is it only if TEF is approved? Yes, and it should be American spot Bitcoin and TEF. But if it is not approved, then we will just linger at the 25-30,000 marks. No, Bitcoin has growth potential, and in this case, like this video, post it on your social networks, send it to your friend. It's a completely small thing that you can do, but an absolutely huge thing for my channel. And finally, I want to tell you what is expected of us in the media in the near future. What will be the psychology of the market, its participants, bloggers, and so on. Be prepared for this. So, I am sure that now they will start predicting Bitcoin for $15,000 again. There will be a lot of such headlines. And every time the market moves strongly in one direction or another, the media space supports the emotion of the crowd, makes it more saturated and vivid. Bitcoin has fallen by $2,000. Bear market? What a nightmare. We'll drop another $10,000. Bitcoin has grown by $2,000. Well. Bull market, we will grow another $10,000. That's how people's emotions are controlled. That's how they fill their trades. This is how people manage to lose both on growth and attack. The reality is that no one can ever be right forever. And I may be wrong now. YouTubers and leaders don't always pick up on media narratives for me. And the attacks hyperbolize this downward movement, saying that the collapse will be even more apocalyptic. On growth too, saying that this upward movement will be literally explosive, parabolic. Even such well-known investors as Robert Kiyosaki, Michael Berry, or Peter Schiff do this. Haven't you noticed? Why are they doing this? Because that's what people want to hear. This is what is gaining clicks. Click on my video, bring me more views. Therefore, in whatever direction the market moves, you can expect two extremes in the media space, either euphoria or apocalyptic mood. And now they will talk about $15,000 for Bitcoin, and even more, even lower. But you have to remember and understand your plan. You have to control emotions, not hyperbolize them. You have to understand, their task has never been to take care of you. Their task is to get the most out of you. Maximum of your money, maximum of monetization. Clicks on headlines, viewing ads, opening positions in the end, on the market, dictated not by the mind, but by a bright hyperbolized emotion. Always follow your plan. A plan to buy $300 every month. Do it. The plan is to fix a third of the profit when you get 3 X's.